Hey guys, this is Mrs. Mendy, and today we're going to go over some of the types of evidence of evolution because there's really a lot of it, and understanding that will hopefully let you in on the idea that so much evidence goes toward this, and it's from so many different directions that that's why it is the center of biology. Okay. We've been talking about evolution as if it's one thing, but there are different scales of evolution. So, like different levels at which it works. Microevolution, that's kind of what we've been talking about, is the change in frequency in different genes in population. So, micro level. There is, I should say, there is also macro level. Macro level means like the development of whole new lines, and this takes much, much longer. So stuff starts out as microevolution, but macroevolution is the development of new species and bigger. So new lines. So like birds being a branch of dinosaurs. That's one scale of evolution. And even like the different types of dinosaurs. Bird hipped dinosaurs, that's what ornithischia means. And saurischia means lizard hipped because of the similarities in their pelvises. Evidence for small evolution, like the change in population traits, can be seen directly. That's kind of on a human scale. We can see it over a generation or two or 10. Evidence for large scale evolution is for making big family trees, like what's related to what, which has a more recent common ancestor, birds and reptiles or birds and amphibians, whatever. So, macroevolution is the development of new species and new evolutionary branches. You can't see it directly as humans because it takes much longer. This is on, hundreds of thousands to millions of years. So, because we can't see it directly, evidence for large scale evolution looks for similarity among groups. So, number one, I'm going to be giving you a list of things to write down. So, one, similarity in early development supports evolution. So animals are more similar to each other earlier in their development, and you can kind of see how they branched off from each other by looking at development. So you can see like these guys up here, snake, chicken, possum, cat, bat, human, these are all land animals. And you can see they kind of at this stage they look, sort of like this bent line with some like gunk developing on here, and that's going to be legs and arms and stuff. And you can't really tell which is a human and which is a chicken. They look kind of similar, or like a bat and a cat and a possum look similar. You can see from the fish, some of them look a little more similar, but the fish look more like the humans than they do when they're grown up. But you can see as they get older, they become more distinctive, and you can learn a lot of things about like what things are more closely related by looking at the embryos. Embryos are really interesting anyway. Like development's really cool. Look at the snake. It's curly, curly, curly. It just has a really long backbone and it spirals around. Look how big the chicken's eyes are. Anyway, two, similar but different body structures support evolution. So sometimes they call this homology. Um, and what that is you can kind of see how the different structures developed from the same thing. So look at these different animals: human, cat, whale, bat, and these are their arms or forelimbs, whatever. Look, they have one bone, one bone, one bone, one bone. So that's like the upper arm and us. Lower arm has two bones here, two bones here, two bones here, two bones here. It's a little hard to see that when it's so thin in the bat. And then wrist bones, these a bunch of little bones all together, little bones all together, little bones together. Hand bones, you may not think of your hand as being a bunch of long bones, but it is. It's just the flesh that makes it one thing in the palm of your hand. Um, and then finger bones. So here's that cat's hand. It's the same in dogs too. Whale is here, bat, it's here. And so you can see like these different structures. There's some things that are a little bit different, like whales have sort of like copied these finger bones on down. Um, but we have the same number of bones as like the cat And the bat, they're not as differentiated, same number of finger bones. Similarity in DNA sequences. So this is number 3 to write down. That supports evolution. And this, you don't try to write any of this down, but this is one way to compare DNA. So this is just the DNA sequences of all these different animals. So here's like human, mouse. You can kind of see some of them: rat, chicken, um, other stuff, and then it gets into the dromedary. So that's a camel. Um, and you can see like there are some things that are the same all across. Some things that are same all across, like this blue regions. And so you can organize these by how much DNA they share and what sequences they share. Okay, and so a computer program takes the DNA sequences that are like this, that are kind of hard to see, although you can see that some stuff is shared, and it makes it into a tree like this by how closely related they are. So it's kind of interesting. And some of the things you would guess, like that rodents and rabbits are pretty closely related. A lot of people think that rabbits are rodents. They're not. But look, some of these are surprising, like primates and rodents are fairly close together. Fairly close together, closer than we are to like carnivores. So that's like dogs and cats and hyenas and stuff. And there's horses down here. So horses and carnivores are more closely related to each other than they are to us. And bats are more closely related to carnivores. They're a carnivore. They're not mice, because here's mice up here in rodents. Anyway, it's sort of interesting to see stuff like this. But this supports evolution because you can imagine these guys branching off of each other. And okay, so there's proof that these things, big body changes, can happen from small gene changes. So you can get different structures pretty quickly, like copying bits. So this is an experiment that was actually done, and this is bizarre. So here's a normal fruit fly zoomed in a microscope with 2 wings. Here's 1 and 2. And this is a freaky mutant with 4 wings. Scientists copied a single gene to make this happen. So it was just like the gene for like make a set of wings. And so if you copied that, you got 2 sets of wings. Isn't that weird? Just like as easy as that. Okay, so if you copy the control gene that does, then it sets in motion a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, number 4, similarity in molecules used by all life supports evolution. Because why would this be so unless we had a common ancestor? So all life uses proteins, uses carbohydrates, uses fats and oils, and uses DNA in their bodies, from bacteria to you. Fossils support evolution, and we went through that in an activity we did the other day. um, that we can see change happening through time and different things developing, going extinct, and how one thing sort of like you get transitional fossils from one form to another form. And we can see that. So here is one that we went over in an activity that we did in class. But whales are a really good example of this because the fossil record shows this pretty clearly. Like my favorite thing on this is these little tiny legs in whales, and then they just sort of go away. Like it was normal legs, getting smaller legs, smaller, but still on the outside, and then inside the body. So this tiny little thing right here, that's leftover legs and pelvis, which is kind of cool. And we can see these changing slowly over time in the fossil record. This is neat too. Vestigial structures. So this is a weird science word. So vestigial. Say that a couple times. Vestigial to practice. Vestigial structures are kind of leftover parts from an earlier body shape. So the animals or plants or whatever, they have this leftover structure that shows, okay, this used to be for something else. It's still hanging around, but we don't use it for the same thing anymore. So examples. There's whale hip bones, no legs, no need for hips. The hips don't even connect to the spinal cord or the spinal column, the backbone anymore. Snakes also have these leg bones. It's more noticeable in some snakes than others, but like, what was that for? Some of them just have this little reduced hind leg like a little bone that pokes out. And then humans, and there's a million of these vestigial structures and all kinds of creatures, but in humans, this tailbone area, okay, this is where our tail was. We have this, and it doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of inside our body. This doesn't support your hips or anything because your hips are not shown in this. Your hip bone is not shown in here. So we have tails. Everybody has a tail. Every human has a tail. Once in a while, somebody will be born with like a little flesh tail outside their body, but they usually get that removed because it creeps people out. Okay. Also, remember the same species can look very different. Okay, so here's all people. All modern humans are one species, just one. And we can be tall, we can be short, we can be light, we can be dark. We have different colors. Some of us have different patterns, like this freckled person has like a pattern on their face. Okay, but we're all one species. But at the same time, they can look the same. They can look very different. Oh, this is the wrong thing. This should say they can look very much the same, but they're different species. Your teacher, Mrs. Medi, messed this up. Okay, sorry. So these birds look the same on the outside. This is an eastern meadowlark and a western meadowlark, but their two species don't interbreed. Not at all. They don't interbreed. They sing a different song. They sing a different song. So the girls on the east side like the eastern song, and the girls on the west side like the western song, and they do not cross over. So they're a different species because they don't interbreed. Okay, also some weird stuff happening with transitioning is with global climate change, a lot of polar bears are having to come further south than they have ever come before. Grizzly bears and polar bears actually are fairly closely related. So and as the polar bears are coming down more, they're getting hybrids. So this is a growler bear is what they're called, and it's sort of half grizzly bear, half polar bear as the polar bears are coming further south. And you can see all kinds of other things. Here's these. This is the whales. Um, and you can look at their different skulls. And so this is a family tree of whales. Here's our modern whales here, and these are old-fashioned ones. So like when the tree branch stops, that means it went extinct, and we don't have that anymore. So these guys come all the way out. Okay, that's some evidence for evolution from a lot of different directions, and I'll see you next time.